Okay, great. So let's make our way into child's pose or whatever shape you'd like to kind of get going in your practice. So let's find a place that feels like a good place to breathe. So if child's pose isn't that, you could certainly be in seated or even lying down. And let me just share the playlist before I forget. So if you like to have some music during your class, this is my suggestion for today. And that should be in the recording description if you're looking for that later. So just take a moment to kind of settle in, whatever that looks like for you. Get comfy cozy. And you can take a couple of deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Maybe just beginning by taking a moment to notice where your breath is willing to go and where it is not willing to go right now. And our energy flow practice it's not just about the physical body, it's also about energy, the energy body, the mood, what's happening kind of in the spirit. So just taking a moment to really check in and feel for that is a really powerful practice in terms of rebalancing when things are feeling a little off or just sort of staying connected. So just noticing what you can. Finding yourself in this room, on this earth, connected to this land, this particular place where you are. Maybe remembering the traditional names of the land if you know them. And starting to find your ujjayi pranayam, so that nice wide breath into the ribs. Gentle whispering sound or ocean sound at the back of the throat. And you're more than welcome to keep your eyes closed as we start to enter into the movement practice. So you could certainly stay there a little bit longer. We're kind of aiming towards downward dog, so maybe you want to take some cat and cows first. And again, just staying with that question of noticing where the breath will go and where it will not go. When you find that downward facing dog, knees a little bit bent, elbows a little bit bent, hugging them towards each other, but you can keep moving. You can, again, certainly keep your eyes closed, just feeling. Noticing if any intentions are arising for your practice in particular today. And just folding that into your breath. And when you're ready, walk towards your hands, coming into a standing forward bend. Feet as wide as you like them. Knees as bent as you need them to be, including resting elbows on those bent knees, which is a little more supportive for the back. If it feels good to hang down though, go ahead. You can hold opposite elbows or have your fingertips on the ground. Again, movement is great here. Stillness is fine to just check it in. And then rolling up one vertebrae at a time, or sweeping up in one breath. You could walk your hands up your legs if you need to. Drawing belly in, knees nice and bent, feet active, come to stand. Rolling your shoulders onto your back and just seeing if you can find that place where you feel like you're standing with as least effort as possible here. Staying connected to your breath. And we'll move through our sun salutation. So as you're ready, inhale, reach your arms up to the sky. Exhale, dive to the earth. Lengthen up halfway, and then step your right foot behind you and bring down your knee. Heart and hands rise. Inhale, low lunge. Exhale, downward dog. Connect the palms, step back. Come forward into a plank. Feel free to use your knees or not, and lower all the way down to the ground for this first one. Nice gentle cobra as you inhale, rolling the shoulders back, and then press into your downward dog. Right leg rises to the sky, inhaling. Step that foot through and lower down your back knee. You can always do high lunge there if your knees are happier, no worries. Forward fold as you exhale to the top of your mat. Lengthen. And fold. Bend your knees, inhale. And dive, exhale. Lengthen, draw your heart forward. And step your left foot back. Heart and hands rise, inhale. Long sides of the waist. And then downward dog as you exhale. Come forward to your plank. Lower all the way down, or maybe it's a little push up. Roll the shoulders back, take cobra or upward dog if you prefer. Back to downward dog from there. Left leg rises on your inhale. And step the foot through. Inhale, long sides of the waist. Exhale to the top of your foot. Lengthen and melt. Bend your knees, rise all the way up. Bring your hands to your heart. And keep flowing. Inhale, rise again. Exhale, dive. Lengthen, really following your breath. Right foot back. Let your inhale do the work of lifting your heart to the sky. And then back to downward dog. Inhale to your plank. Little push up or all the way down. Pull through to your cobra or upward dog, shoulders down the back. And back to downward dog. Right leg to the sky. And through. Inhale. Beautiful. Forward fold. Lengthen. And melt. Inhale. And dive. Lengthen. Left foot back. Inhale. Beautiful. And downward dog. To your vinyasa, keep in mind this could always be cat and cow. It doesn't have to be this full sequence, okay? It's just what works for you to keep your breath moving through your body. Just get your spine moving a little bit. When you get back to downward dog, left leg will rise on your inhale. And step the foot through. Beautiful, lengthen. So you guys forward fold. Lengthen and melt. Bend your knees, rise all the way up. Bring your hands to your heart and just take a moment to feel, to notice where your breath is going or not. Beautiful. Reach your arms up to the sky once again. Dive down. Lengthen halfway. This time as you exhale, sit your bum down behind you. So feel free to use your hands. If you can go hands free, feel free to do that. and lay all the way down onto your back. And if you do have a block handy, just put it close to your mat so that it's there when you need it. Okay. I'm going to do a little bit of core work here. So depending on where you're at, I'll give you a couple of options. And if you know that there's a particular type of core that does work best for you, please feel free to take that. Okay. Feet on the floor. Inhale. As you exhale, gather your pelvic floor in and up, and your belly button presses towards your heart and up. Back towards your spine and up towards your heart. So you're kind of engaging everything. Keep the back neutral. And as you inhale, just pick up your right foot a couple of inches. And as you exhale, put it down. Left leg lifts on your inhale and put it down. So that's a nice option if you're building core strength and if you've got some lower back sensitivity here. If even this is not working for you, another option could be to slide one leg at a time, and that actually directly contacts the psoas as well. So again, there's different ones that you can play with, see if they work for you. If you're feeling like this is pretty good, you want to actually do a little bit more, you can straighten your legs up to the sky. It's totally fine to have a bend in the knees there, and maybe even curl the shoulder blades up off the mat. Okay, and as you exhale, you're just going to let one leg go down, and then you're going to lift it up. And then the other leg goes down, and you're going to lift it up. So try to keep the back nice and neutral, and really focus on keeping the belly button drawing in and up so that it's not popping forward. It helps me so much in my core work in general to flare my toes. Okay, so your deep core line actually starts in the roots of your toes. So if you're using your toes, you're just so much likelier to be activating that deep core line and actually getting these muscles to work for you in a way that is supportive and useful. Okay, so it's a full body movement. Notice though that your jaw is not doing the work. Okay, especially if you are holding your head up with your hands, try to relax your head back into your hands, but you're really using your abdominals, not your throat or your teeth. Good, okay. So if you're fatiguing, you can take a couple more and rest. If you're feeling like, no, I'm good, I want to keep going, let's just stay with the flow. Add a little twist. So right elbow is going towards left knee, left elbow towards right knee. So I'm twisting towards the leg that's closer to my face. So just adding the obliques a little bit if you're feeling strong today. And if you need a rest, you just take a rest. I've really kind of moved away from this idea of like we're doing a certain number of reps, and more so just working to that place where we know we're at our edge, that strengthening place. And every day is different in terms of that. So really listening to your body. Okay. Usually people don't want to do more core than I'm offering. You can. I've never seen anyone do it. Okay. I'm just going to go for one more round. And that is enough for me. Let's hug the knees in. Take a nice deep breath. Beautiful. Okay, so from here, if you have a block, I'd love for you to put it underneath your pelvis. You don't have to, okay? It can be a nice low piece of support. This shouldn't hurt your back at all. We're just gonna release the psoas, and we'll do that with the block if we have one and it feels safe, okay? So we're just gonna take some nice deep breaths there. So block is underneath the back of the sacrum, and then gently straighten out your right leg. Okay, you can flex the foot, breathe into the belly. You can also hold on to the left knee with your interlaced fingers and hug it in towards your armpit. And again, you could do this without a block as well. It's the same thing. It's just you're going to get more of a release with a prop under your bum. So really pressing forward through that heel, hugging the knee a bit wide to the side, and breathing into the groin, lower belly, softening all those muscles we were just working. And then we'll gently switch. So left foot to the floor, then the right. Carefully straighten the left leg, see how that feels. That might be enough. Okay, you might bring in the right knee, and that'll add to it. So you can hug the knee a bit wide towards your armpit, sort of outer shoulder region, pressing forward through the heel and breathing down into this left side belly. This is incidentally really nice for digestion. It sort of helps the the organs to sort of know what to do here. Just give them a little squeeze and release. Lower back pain and digestion often have a relationship, not always, but they can because of the psoas. Beautiful. And then let's gently let that go. When you're ready, one foot to the floor and then the other. And you can take a couple of breaths just to relax here, kind of let your belly be really nice and soft. Or you could straighten both legs, reach your arms up over the head and take a little bit more of an active stretch over that little bit of a lift and just see how that feels. Again, this should be painless in the back. If your back doesn't like it, you don't have to add that part. So nice. And then when you're ready, gently bend your knees. If they're not, lift your bum up, slide that prop out of the way and just take a moment to feel. So that might be simple with the feet on the floor. If you want to hug the knees in or extend the legs, feel free to do that. Okay. And then when you're ready, we're going to transition through Vinyasa. Okay. So a few different ways to do that. You can rock and roll forward and back along your spine and then walk or even hop back to downward dog. You can also roll to your side and kind of crawl back that way. So I don't really mind too much how you get there. And then you can take cat and cow or your full vinyasa just to kind of rinse that through. So I'm going to take a relatively full vinyasa here, see how it goes. I like a push up here because when we don't push back away from the ground, we can lose our biceps over time. We need our biceps as well as our triceps to be strong. That's a longer conversation. You guys don't need to hear about that too much right now. Okay, and then we're going to walk back to the top of the mat and come to standing either by rolling up or sweeping it up in one breath. So take your time, whatever you need to do here. And then just take a moment to return to standing and notice how your body may feel a little bit different having contacted the core. I like to do core right before balance because it's a really useful aspect of balance, okay? So go ahead and lift up your toes, spread them apart and reconnect them. And just imagine your heels getting a little bit heavier, okay? Soften the knees, lean into your left foot, pick up your right one and hold on to it with one or both hands. I've just got it with my right hand. Hug the knees together, draw your tailbone down, push your foot into your hand a little bit. So I want you to feel your quadricep lengthen here. My left hand is just at the center of my chest. I might take my ring fingernail into my thumb pad. Some of you guys know I love that mudra for balancing. It's called Prithvi. And then you can stay here or we'll take it into a gentle dancer's pose. So I'm going to turn my right palm to face out. So I'm holding the inner edge of my foot. I'm going to bend my left leg a little bit more and start to kick my foot into my hand. My left hand can come forward. So optional here, of course. It might not be super deep because we haven't opened up this area too much. So just gentle with it. Try to keep your hips square. Inhale and then gently step back to warrior one. So you're going to release the foot and land. And it's a relatively short stance, but it's wide. Okay. Straighten your leg to start. Square your hips forward. Draw your tailbone down and press your back heel into the mat so the back leg is really straight and you can feel that quadricep active. Keep all that as you bend into your front leg. So you should feel, I'm hoping, your quadricep and psoas. Take your hands to your ribs if you can. And think about your ujjayi breath. Really, as you inhale, lifting the back ribs and expanding them. So it's not a hunching, but it's almost this hollowing feeling here. Rather than being in a back bend, we're actually gathering the intention to the front of the spine, if you can kind of imagine that area. Then bring your hands forward. Reach your right hand a little bit farther forward so that your ribs square. You can stay there or bring your hands together and lift them any amount. Just make sure that your shoulders feel safe. And really imagine that your back heel and your fingertips are stretching away from each other. And that the backs of your ribs are expanding with each breath. So I know it looks a little funny. It looks kind of subtle the way that I'm doing it. But I'm really getting that length into the psoas, which is my intention here today. Okay, inhale and then gently bring your hands back to your hips. And we're going to lower that back knee down into a kneeling lunge. So It's a little bit of a shorter lunge than we might normally do, so we want to have probably some padding underneath and it's a bit sharp on the knee. So we're in kind of 90-degree angles here, roughly. And that might adjust a little as we're here. So like in the last pose, hips square, tailbone drawing down. You can press the hips forward a little bit, but I want you to think about that same intention of the backs of the ribs expanding and lifting. And you can reach the arms up again. This time, maybe bend the elbows, hug the elbows together, and press the elbows up to the sky as you keep working the tailbone down, squeezing the bum. Okay, feel free to stay here or release your hands. Left hand can come onto your thigh. Okay, right arm can stay reaching up, or if you want to try it, maybe gentle with your knee, you could bend the back leg, hold the foot, and gather it in. So do make sure that your knee feels safe here. If it does not, just come back to this place. Really good. Inhale, and then gently release your foot if you've got it. Bring the hands back down to the earth and release your left leg behind you. So we're kind of on hands and knees, and the left leg is extended. Okay, and then go ahead and bend the leg again. Draw the knee in towards your chest. Try not to change anything else. Open the knee to the left and circle it back to the sky. Good. And do that again. Keep your gaze steady. Try to keep your shoulders on your back so your hip is only moving in its socket. Everything else is really steady. And let's take one more. Beautiful. And then either child's pose or downward facing dog. If you're in downward dog, you might want to pedal your heels out. Okay, you could also add vinyasa if you want to. Nice, you guys. Okay, from downward dog, you could absolutely be on hands and knees here too. Extend your right leg up to the sky and square your hips so that the heel is rising up and you can kind of feel that length on the back of the left leg. Inhale, and as you exhale, bring your knee in towards your nose, and if your shoulders are okay with it, come to plank. Extend the leg back up to the sky and do that 2 more times. So the knee comes in and maybe we're coming forward as well. One more. Good. Okay, extend the leg up to the sky. And this time we're going to come into warrior 2. So step the foot through, back heel lens, reach the arms up and open. Good. So knee over the ankle, draw tailbone down, long through the sides of the waist. And again, kind of strong with the back leg. So this quadricep is activated and this back hip is lowering slightly. And you might actually feel a little release in the front of the thigh here. Let's turn the palms up today, bend the elbows slightly, and gently stretch the thumbs back so that there's a little bit of chest opening. Find that strong breath. Nice, and then straighten your front leg without locking the knee, tip the hips back, reach forward and come towards a triangle pose. So right hand can come to the top of the shin, turning the palm up. And here's what I'd love for you to try if you'd like with the top hand. Shoulders are drawing down the back. The hand is just wrist over the shoulder, but then flex the hand as if you're trying to hold up the ceiling. And you can slightly stretch the hand back. So there's a little bit of a forearm and chest stretch there that you might explore. Nice, circle your wrist. Look down and then come up a little bit. Let's actually come back right back into warrior two as a little bit of a springboard. We're going to come into a balancing pose. It's triangle tipped onto one leg. Okay, so think about drawing the belly in, bend that front leg a little bit, but reach forward. You might hop the back foot a couple of times. And we're seeing if we can come into a balancing pose called half moon or Ardha Chandrasana. Okay, so this is a bit of a floating version here with my heart really high. You could also put the fingertips on the ground if you have quite a long arm, or you could put your hand on a block. So it would just be to the outside of your right foot. Oops. Finnegan's sleep talking is distracting me. Okay, and just as an experiment here, if you're feeling pretty balanced, you're feeling pretty good, you've got your hand on a block or the floor, you could try bending the back leg and just reaching for that foot. So that's the Chapasana variation. Maybe for now, you're focusing on the quadricep, drawing tailbone down and just extending that foot. It's a little more of a back bend if you let the shoulder come back and open, kind of like dancer's pose. So just something to experiment with a little bit there. Gently. Okay, and then if you can, what I'd love for you to do is stand up. So you're lifting your heart and then the feet come together. Yeah, nice. Let's shake that out a little bit. And let's actually rinse that through so that we can balance again after the asymmetry. So let's reach the arms up. Exhale, dive. Lengthen halfway. Then fold, and then bend the knees, look forward, rise all the way up, and then recenter, hands at your heart. Just take a moment to feel, to lift the toes, reconnect them. Soften the knees, lean left, and we're going to come into that quadricep stretch. Sorry, I lied to you guys. Lean right. We're going to lift up the left foot. That is the foot that we're going to lift here, okay? Left foot. Hugging the inner thighs together, slight bend to the right knee, drawing the tailbone down and pressing the foot into the hand. So just holding the foot with the left hand. Right hand can be at the heart. And for right now, we're just focusing on that quadricep release. Breathing, finding steadiness. Good, and you can absolutely stay right here. If you want to take it as a bit more of a back bend, we transition to dancer's pose. So you're holding the inner edge of the foot so the palm faces out now. That helps to rotate the shoulder open. Then the standing leg a little bit more. Then you can kick the foot into the hand and experiment with dancers. And again, this may not be a super deep dancer's pose right now. That's okay. We're just kind of warming in this direction in a few different ways. Looking for steadiness more than anything right now. Okay, inhale. Then we're going to gently step back to warrior one. So just let that foot land. Nice work, you guys. We've got width and it's not too long of a stance. Straighten that front leg, hands to hips. Square your hips forward. Draw the tailbone down. So you can bend your back leg a little to do that. And then keep the tailbone long as you work that back leg towards straight, pressing into the heel. Do engage your left glute. Okay. Keep squaring the hips forward and then bend into your knee. So for me, that's pretty foolproof. Like I will get the stretch right here. Okay, and then keep looking forward. Bring your hands up to your ribs if you can, and see if you can really feel your inhales pressing into your hands. Up and wide. So the psoas, we don't need to really get too much into it, but there's part of it kind of around the low ribs. And breathing is one of the most important ways to get into it. Okay, you can reach the arms forward. Left hand tugs slightly more forward. You might even feel a bit more in your psoas there. And you can stay or you can reach the arms up. I've interlaced all the fingers except for the first one, which I sometimes like to call Charlie's Angels, Mudra. Keep breathing into the back ribs here. Also Vajra, the Thunderbolt Mudra. Really nice. Okay, bring your hands back to your hips and then carefully lower that back knee down to the ground. And you might just want to put your prop on it, depending on how short your stance was. You may need to adjust, but we're looking for basically 90-degree angles here. We're not in a really deep lunge. That might change a little bit as you're in it. Just like the last pose, hips square, tailbone draws down. And we're really thinking more about the back ribs lifting up. So it's this lengthening here. Okay, arms could reach up. Maybe you can take that same mudra or just palms together is fine. See how it feels to bend the elbows. Think of hugging them together a little bit as you scoop them up to the sky. But again, with that feeling of the energy coming from, if you imagine your spine, the front of the spine. So really deep in your body. Okay, from here, let's try taking the right palm onto the thigh and reaching the left arm up. It's the same quality. Okay, or maybe you're going to reach back behind you and see what it feels like to lift up your foot and hold on to it. Some people really like this one. I find that my knee is not crazy, but there are different ways of accessing that quadricep. And certainly just in the lunge, you're going to get it. So if you, like me, find that your knee is not crazy about that one, that's fine. Just keep working with the intention here. You'll definitely get the stretch. Nice. Inhale, and then gently release the hands down and extend your right leg back. So we're on hands and knees, but the right leg is back. Reconnect your core, shoulders onto your back, bend the knee, and then draw it in and open to the right, and then circle it back up to the sky. So we want to get a little bit of that outer hip strengthening going, just whatever you can access here. And the slower you go, the more juice you kind of get out of that. Another way of saying that is it's harder if you go slower. Awesome. And then we'll release the leg and come into child's pose or downward dog. And then another option here would be full vinyasa or cat and cow. Just taking a moment to check and reconnect. All right, so from here, let's take the left leg up to the sky. Now, I'd love for you to really square your hips here. So the left heel is going straight up towards the ceiling, and I want you to actually feel that hamstring stretch in the right leg. So press that right heel down. Inhale, and then as you exhale, bend the knee and bring it in. Bring your shoulders over your wrists too, if you wrists and shoulders are okay with that. Extend up, and we're going to do that 2 more times. Nice, powerful breath. And then we'll step through into our warrior 2. Back heel lands and we rise. Good. Tailbone is long, front knee is over the ankle. And for me, warrior 2 is in part about really straightening this back leg and then lowering my back hip slightly. And then it's actually, I can feel the hip opening here at the front of the thigh. If it worked for you before, turn your palms up, slight bend to the elbows. So that helps to drop the shoulders. And then just take the thumbs back enough that you feel a little bit of a stretch in the chest. Keep breathing into your back ribs. Awesome. And then straighten your front leg without locking the knee. You might need to shorten your stance, you might not. Tip the hips back, so they're gonna tilt just a little bit down, okay? Fingertips are light, turn the heart up to the sky. So as the hips turn a little down, the ribs turn a little up. So it's not explicitly a twist, but there's a slight twist in the spine here. Okay, shoulders on the back, and again, maybe try flexing your right palm back like you're holding up the ceiling, and just take that hand a little bit back. Really spread the fingers. I don't know how we get along in our society with all our typing and thumbing without stretching our wrists. We never think about our wrists, but we use them a lot in our culture. I guess a lot of us just get carpal tunnel syndrome and other things. Very common. Okay, go ahead and circle your wrist. Okay, and then we'll come back to, doesn't have to be like a full warrior two, but sort of that shape to prepare for our Ardha Chandrasana. So we've got a little bit of a bend in the knee. You want to think about like kind of zipping up along the front line. So you're really connected here and you're tipping forward. So it's the same alignment as triangle or warrior two, except that you only have one foot on the floor, okay? So the left hip is opening, but everything else is kind of in a line. So feel free to put a block underneath your hand. It can be really helpful. A big thing for me is looking down at the ground. If I look up, I almost always fall. That's something I can work on, obviously. But looking down makes my balance a lot easier. Okay, and if you want to try it, maybe bend your back leg and hold your foot. Think about what we did at the beginning of the sequence. So just pointing the knee towards the back of the room, tailbone long, just quadricep stretch is great. And it just shifts the shape a little bit. If you let the shoulder come back and you kick the foot into the hand, it becomes more like a back bend. It might not look any different, but it feels different. Okay, really nice. Release your foot if you've got it. Look down, engage the core, and see if you can stand up. Keeping your back neutral. Nice. You might want to shake that out a little. Okay, and let's rinse it. Reach up and dive. Lengthen and melt. Bend the knees and rise up. And then bring your hands together in front of your heart. Maybe take a moment just to check in, reconnect, feel. Good. Okay, so from here, I'm trying to think if I can kind of fold these two together. Let's start together and see what we can do. Okay, so let's reach the arms up to the sky. Exhale, dive down. Lengthen up halfway and then step your right foot back. Take a really long lunge this time. And you may want to put your knee down on a piece of support. Take your right hand a little bit wide off your mat and open the left arm up to the sky. Okay, so from here, I'm going to give you two options. So you might want to just take a quick peek to see what I'm doing so I can kind of show you the two possibilities. So option one, three possibilities. Option one, stay. Option two, we bend the leg and we just explore another quadricep opening back bend in a different location, okay? Option three, we do it in a side plank. So I'm gonna lift up my knee, plant my palm a little ahead of my shoulder, walk my foot to the middle of my mat until I can get onto the outer arch of the foot. Here's side plank, lifting the hips up really high. Here's our challenge pose, teardrop. So it's the same shape that we've been playing with, just in a side plank. You can let the foot fall behind you and that becomes the wild thing, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. Okay, a little more complex, couple of options. Any questions? Okay, so let's give that a try. So either you're staying where you are, you're bending the back leg, reaching back and holding the foot, or you're going to try that side plank. So if you're trying the side plank, you've got your right palm on the mat. That's it, Tessa. Walk your foot along the long edge of the mat until you can find your side plank shape. That's it. Reach the arm up to the sky. Awesome. And really press the feet and the hands away from each other so your hips lift like a side bend. There you go. Your top leg will get lighter. Maybe you'll bend it. Yes, Tessa, so good. Nice, Arel, lift your hips even higher. You're doing awesome. That's it. And yeah, you can take that into Wild Thing, which is easier than the teardrop pose for sure. Turning the heart open. Nice work, everybody. And then returning to your downward dog and do what you need to do. So child's pose, cat and cow, vinyasa, whatever you need. Yes. You guys are so game. You did an awesome job. Do you have any questions? That was quite a few variations kind of in one. So was anything unclear about that or any parts where you got stuck? Feels okay to try it on the other side? Okay, great. All right, so let's just go ahead and switch sides. So most of you are kind of in a downward dog shape. So just go ahead and step your right foot forward. Let's put the left knee down. You can take your left hand, palms or fingertips open, and let's all take this twist to start because this is just such a lovely pose to take. Yeah, okay, so again, this is a beautiful place to stay. You could also bend your back leg and hold onto it. So this is a twist, right? Or we'll try that side plank variation. I'll do it with you. So I'm just going to replace my left palm so it's just ahead of my shoulder. I'll lift up my knee and my hips. I like to lift them up really high. It helps me to get into the shape. I'm going to heel toe my foot until it's at the long edge of the mat. And I can get the outer arch of the sole of my left foot on the ground. I feel like the side's going to be harder. You can stay here. You can side plank. Again, the more you can lift your hips, the easier it's going to be to do this balance pose. The foot may float, maybe you'll bend it. I've got right now my left knee a little bent and almost my whole left foot is on the ground. Once I get into the pose, I can straighten a little more. I'm letting the shoulder come back a bit. And a nice way to fall out is Wild Thing pose, letting the ball of the foot come behind me and turning my heart open to the sky. Make sure you've got a little bend in your left elbow so you're not jamming your left shoulder. Awesome work. And then back to downward dog. Last vinyasa, if you walked one. Nice. And then let's come to sitting on the heels when you're ready. Or seated on your bum is fine. And we'll do a little wrist release because, yeah, if you tried that variation, it's quite a bit on the wrists. So let's let that go. Okay, so as you inhale, spread the fingers nice and wide. And as you exhale, curl into a little paw. Inhale, open the fingers as wide as you can. Exhale and curl. Yeah. There you go. And exhale. One more. And maybe hold this time, shoulders soft. And release, let's circle. Okay, so we've been exploring some various back bends today. So I'd like to take bridge pose, which is symmetrical. So we've been doing lots of asymmetry in our front body lengthening. So let's take a bridge, which is definitely one of my healers for lower back pain, kind of depending on how you're doing it. So I like to have my feet just a bit wider than my hips, which is non-traditional, but I like it. Elbows by the ribs. We press the elbows down and apart to hug the shoulders together. I like to engage the core, but I don't actually like to curl the tailbone to come up. I like to keep the spine neutral. We'll press into the feet, lift the bum up. Feel free to stay here. I quite like this variation, holding the outer edges of the mat and pulling the edges of the mat apart. You could also interlace your fingers under you or grab your strap and use that to give you some feedback. Hug the inner thighs a bit together and think about the breathing we were doing in Warrior One. So breathing into the back ribs and really expanding the ribs up towards the heart. In this pose, part of what that's going to need is the hips pulling away from the ribs. So it's like you're stretching your belly like toffee. and then gently release and take a little rest. Good. Okay, so I just want to share with you guys something about bridge pose because I teach it a little bit differently than some people do, and I experience it quite differently from how I used to. So often when we think about bridge pose, we're kind of engaging, we're lifting the bum, and we're just kind of stuck in this shape. But for me, part of what's so great about bridge pose is actually that stretch of the psoas and the belly. Okay, so if you can just turn to your side for a moment and take a peek at what I'm going to do. I want to try to show that as best as I can. So I'm going to lift back up, take my variation with my arms. It doesn't matter which one. And then I'm really hugging my knees together. And then I want to think about that breathing. So one thing you can actually do with some feedback with your hands is try to spread the hips and the ribs away from each other. So notice this, rather than here. I'm going to breathe like this. See how my belly is hollowing. I'm pushing into the floor quite strongly, and I'm really trying to stretch the soft part of my belly, including the lower back. So it's not that I'm trying to get as high as I possibly can, it's that I'm trying to stretch the canister of the core. Okay, and then I'm going to come down. Any questions about that? Feel free to unmute and ask if you have any. I'm going to take a peek. Try not to get dizzy from jumping up. So go ahead and set up your feet and your arms. Lift up your bum. Doesn't have to be that high, but you do want to hug the inner thighs and push the floor forward with your feet. Push the elbows down and apart. Let your ribs roll towards your chin. Good. If you want, you can use your hands as a little bit of feedback, like trying to press the hips and the ribs away from each other. And then lift your ribs as you inhale and feel the breath actually hollowing up. So this is a diaphragmatic breath rather than a belly breath. It's just a bit different. And you'll actually feel a stretch inside of your guts, which is way nicer than it sounds. Yeah. Good. Use your arms a lot. So really press them in and let your ribs roll forward. Good, and then gently release. Nice. Okay, so there's only so much that I can see from Zoom, obviously, but here's what I think might be happening for some of you. I'm still seeing a little bit of this conservative bridge. So here I'm using my legs a lot, and I'm not actually using that much of my upper body, and I'm breathing into my belly. Okay, what I want to do instead is use my elbows to like push down and spread so that my ribs actually come towards my chin. And then I'm pushing actively the floor away, which lifts my ribs. So this is the back part of the back bend. Don't be afraid of it. And then the breath moves up into the ribs instead of the belly. So there's actually a hollowing rather than this belly breath. So part of what I'm seeing is the ribs are a little more sunken than I would like. And I want you to actually use your elbows to push the ribs up, okay? So option to try one more time, no pressure. Yeah, Cindy, that looks great. There you go, that looks better, everybody. Yeah, that's breath starting to come in. Good. Yeah, and feel free to use that robot arms. You don't have to necessarily interlace it. If it's easier to really push into your elbows, actually use them. Yeah, almost imagine that with your permission, I had my fingertips in between your shoulder blades and I was pressing your heart up towards the ceiling. There we go. Nice, you guys. That's it. Now I'm starting to see that space. Beautiful. Nice. And you can come down when you're ready and feel free to let me know after if that worked for you or what you thought, okay? So let's rest. I don't really want to go into wheel today. That's not so much my intention, but if you're just feeling like, oh my gosh, I need it, let me have it, do your thing. Okay, the rest of us are gonna start to release. So when you're ready, you can hug your knees into your chest and just rock a little from side to side. And then put your feet on the floor, take your right ankle to your left thigh. Let's take a simple thread the needle. So you can stay here, just softening the knee or bring in the left leg. Keep your feet nice and flexed, and you might explore a little rock from side to side. You might not, depending on how tight your hips are feeling today. And just let your breath be really full. So there are different times to use different breaths. Okay, and here you can absolutely breathe into the belly. Your spine is supported, so you don't really need to do the core breath in the same way. There's so much more to say about that. Feel free to ask some questions if you have them. Okay, you're welcome to stay here, or we'll just see if we can tighten the hip opening a little bit. So you can bring the right heel a little closer to your hip, and then draw the knees a little closer together. So it's sort of like the foot is less of a 90-degree angle and more like a 45. And then just hold whatever's handy and draw that in. So this to me is actually a really useful hip opener when you do have sciatic issues, depending on what's going on with your piriformis, because it just is a little more directed into a bit of a different place in the hip. This is subtle, but you can also think about, and I'm thinking of you, Cindy, because I know you've got some stuff going on in there. You can also kind of think about the outer hip, and I've got my right thumb actually in my hip crease now, just rolling it slightly down towards the bottom of the mat. And sometimes that's like, oh, there it is, right? There's a lot going on in that hip. Nice. And then let's gently release. You can take the windshield wipers, or I often like to shake my legs up towards the sky after through the needle. And then let's come to the second side. So starting with thread the needle. So you've got your left ankle on your right thigh. Your foot may stay on the floor. You might be hugging it in. And with thread the needle, the left knee would be wider than your hip, okay? And your leg looks pretty close to a 90-degree angle, depending on how long your legs are and how tight your hips are. And even just rocking a little from side to side, there's so much information there in the different areas of your hip. Okay, and then let's try and narrow the angle a bit and just see what happens. So you can point your left toes or just soften a little the flex. Bring the foot a little closer down towards the hip crease. And then the knee comes more like over the hip. So it's a little narrower. The knees come a little closer together. And the leg looks more like a 45-degree angle or even less than that. And then we're just holding whatever's handy. So I've got my left hand on my left knee, right hand on my right knee. Right now, sometimes I hold it in different ways. And I'm just exploring what that feels like to draw that in. And then again, you might just want to check in. Is your left hip kind of lifting up towards your rib to try to avoid the stretch? What happens if you take your left hand to your outer hip and roll the outer hip down towards the bottom of your mat? And is it different on the two sides, which is also normal? Beautiful. Okay. And then when you're ready, let's let that go. Again, you could do windshield wipers or shake the legs up to the sky. I'm just running a little short on time here, so let's just do a nice wide windshield wiper to come to rest. So feet are about mat distance apart. Arms can open up really wide, and just take as slow or as fast of a windshield wiper as you want. So you might be pausing for a couple breaths on one side before you go to the other, or you might be in a little bit more movement. Just a nice wide one. And I love this twist because it releases the psoas, which we've been working on today. And I will say half the time I've got lower back pain, it's because my psoas is overly tight. Okay, and then anything left that you need to do to complete your practice, feel free to do, especially if you have the time. Okay, Otherwise, let's prepare for Shavasana. So you can simply flop out. You might have props that you like to use for your Shavasana, like putting a bolster under the knees, which naturally releases the psoas a little bit. If you need that, but you don't have a bolster, bend your knees and rest them against each other. That also releases the psoas. Okay. You can open your arms, draw the shoulders down the back. Maybe there's some shaking or nodding of the head that you want to do. Just let everything relax as much as you can. And soak up, absorb the energy that we've cultivated in our practice, and releasing whatever we have let go that we no longer need. So take a moment to notice how you feel. And to keep in mind that if you have the time and the inclination, of course, you can stay in your Shavasana as long as you want to. Otherwise, we can begin to wiggle the toes and the fingers. You can stretch the arms up over the head. Draw in your knees. And roll over to one side. And then press yourself up to a seat. Bring your hands to your heart or over top or wherever feels right for you. Just take a moment to bow your mind to your hands, your heart, your body, all that it does for you, whatever it took to get here to your practice today. To honor and acknowledge the long and complex lineage of teachers that is with us in our yoga. To honor and acknowledge the land that we practice on, wherever that may be in the world. Thank you for sharing your practice.